small attendance, fairly small attendance today. Um, Welcome everybody.
Welcome.
Today,
Today, what are we talking about? We are talking about our newsletter, which the articles were about putting custom sounds into a Marklin sound decoder, and Curtis's article was.
it's about some variations on how you can set up your sensors in a depot station.
There
So,
you go.
anyways, how should we start? How
I don't
would you
know. You
like
want
to
to get to
start?
that, or is there anything else first?
Let's see. Hmm, Either way, I think it's kind of loose today with the attendance, but mine's going to be sort of a rabbit hole. Not that it's kind of a complex issue to begin with. So you can start off unless we want to answer a couple of questions.
So we have
Have
time
you
for a
seen
thought.
anything in the email list? I
No.
did get a question regarding a gentleman said he has 50 event scripts
Yeah, I read
that he
that.
wants to do, and he wants to know if there's a copy and paste function where you can duplicate those. And essentially, no, there really isn't a cut and paste, but there are some ways around it. That is what we call nesting events. So maybe I'll do a quick demonstration on that one. So let me open up a channel here, and we'll share the screen, and I'll show folks what I mean by that. All right. All right. All right, so here what we have here is we have some, basic setups. Forgive the red dots here. It's just when you're booting up the system. So let's say one of the things that you can do, we're going to create a simple event, and it's probably not going to be very logical. It's just a means to an end. So we're going to create an event. Let me close this. We don't need to see this. So let's just do something where we want to reset these signals so they both read as a stop block. So I will create this. And let me get the third one in there so we're kind of full access. So these are events, and then I'm going to leave it as a manual mode. So this will be, just so we know where they are, lights off. Oh, wait. Stop. Lights. All right. And you notice how the windows are different down here? If you click this checkbox down here on the right, it will actually revert everything to the default name. If you click on this box in the top, it will actually change it down here, and then you can save it. So it has that. Now, let me actually create one more event, and we're going to do the exact opposite. Whoops. Here we are. So we'll change that, close this, make that to go, get that to go. All right. So this is just kind of set up here. Obviously, if we really had this all scripted out, it would already be done, but you kind of lose the ability to show how it works. So these are our lights go. And I'm sure that's not accurate terminology, but we'll go with it. Okay. So now we have two separate events that are completely manually controlled. Let me reopen the window. You can see lights go. Let's get rid of the noise here because there's just too many things to look at. All right. Okay, so now what you can do, let's say you had instances on your layout where you constantly want to use that. So rather than having to reprogram each event to do these functions, we now have manual functions, and what we'll do now is we'll actually have triggers which are activated by whatever contacts we have. So we'll have that as an entry contact, and then I'm going to actually nest this event here, and this is the light go events. Okay. So that's one, and the trigger again gets activated when the train makes contact with that trigger. And I'll do actually the same thing, but this time we'll use the opposite trigger. This one here, the exit. Now again, the logic isn't 100%. I'm just demonstrating this. So now what we've done, we've actually nested this series of events that are triggered. And I'm going to actually leave this one manual. That's just so I can reset everything and we can kind of see it. So that should be the end of our edit. And let me just keep this on display so I can show you. So I'm going to click here and default all the lights to red. Should be working here. What is it? Am I not activated? What's going on here? Okay, so there's a delay error. Let's see, initial reading S88 is not finished yet. Please wait for the process to finish following the default. Okay, so you occasionally run into this. It's just generally the error where you're not using the correct, or it's not reading the S88. And it could be the case that either I assigned the wrong S88 to these events, or because it's not actually wired to track, it's not really wanting to operate. And it really shouldn't matter because these are manual functions. So let's see what I did. And this was where it gets annoying for demo purposes. So essentially what happens, and I'll just kind of explain what should be happening, is when I click on this function play button, it would set all these lights to red, and this is just manual function. But if I hit these trigger points, they should each enable this subroutine and activate the event. So which is basically the lights go event. That's this one here. It would actually make this play and they would all go red. So that's how we nest functions. It kind of allows you to duplicate similar actions throughout the layout rather than having to reprogram these for each event. All right, so hopefully you got that. I know it's a little cryptic. It's hard when we can't really proof some of these events that we have. So it wasn't always an issue when we needed to program these events, but for some reason, the functions don't want to trigger right, and that's because of, I guess it's mostly because of article assignments, which is, if I go to edit article list, you can see that if I just select just to view my controls, these are what assigns bus links, and they get switched to a certain type of control, which is switching it to a GFP2, which is essentially any S88 that's connected, I think, to the underside of the underside of the CS3. Link S88s are specifically to, if you're using link S88s to the devices. And you can see I have two, which is basically identified with different link controllers. And sometimes it just gets confused as to which one it's operating. You can see I have none under link S88.1, and I also don't have any under S88.2, which is probably what my issue is. So, all right, kind of move on. Sorry, guys.
How exactly do you hook up a second link S88 to your CS3? I know there's two ports on the CS3, but not the CS3 Plus.
Well, yeah, part of that issue is really
or is it that you have just had a second one plugged in at one time and it just retains that memory?
Exactly. It just kind of keeps it all in memory, and I'll kind of quickly.
Okay, yeah. It's like mobile stations. Every mobile station you plug into your central station, it keeps the memory of it until you delete.
Yeah, if we go into the CS3 settings and we look up TFP, you can see it identifies.
Yeah.
This is its word. It's bolded out the GFP3 too.
Yeah.
But it shows that the GFP3.1 is the one that's active, and you can click which one it is.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. Yeah.
But in my case, we're using the link S88. So this is where my confusion was. Which device was I using? Now you can, this is the one that's connected to the machine.
It's got the green check mark.
You can actually go here. I think there was a way where you can actually delete one. I forget.
Yeah, in the settings down at the bottom. Oh, there's a trash can right there. When you go, no, settings, down.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. So you can just kind of delete it so it's no longer in your system. So yeah, it takes two of us to actually sort this thing out. So, what for right now, it's like me in panic mode. It's like, why isn't this thing working the way it should? And then Rick keeps the calm mind and tells me,
I keep trying to click on it on my screen, but it doesn't work.
you're being a moron. Okay, let's see if this actually works. Yeah, see how it goes? Now they all go to go. So this is the manual function of these events. So I can click here, and this is the manual function. Again, I'm operating it manually, right? Okay, but in this instance, I wanted to show how different events will work with the nested events. So I'll set it for stop, and then I'll hit this contact, which is equated to FS1, I believe. And you see how it switches.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't have to hit the manual event. This is the actual event. If I go back here, now I can use this controller, and it also switches to the green. So both of these, FS1 and FS2 events, are actually controlling this routing, this event here. So that's what a nesting event is all about. That's how you can repeat stuff. So thank you for living through that one. Hopefully it didn't put you to sleep. And stop share. Oh, we have a question. Yes, yay, a question. If not mistaken, most about L88s can be attached using a terminal that expands the CAN bus.
Yeah, the terminal might do that. Yes. We haven't experimented with that, stuff like that because we haven't had a need to. The question just came up today, in my head when he was talking. So.
Well, the funny thing is, yeah, it may actually work. We haven't really tested it, obviously. I think the potential issue might be. Let's go to the article list really here. Let me show that. Share the
Well,
screen
it
again.
should just show it as separate, like we saw, separate L88s, and you should, I would assume. Well, there's a good picture of me.
Yeah. So am I not sharing?
You're sharing your desktop.
Oh, sorry, wrong one. Share screen. Oh, you get the background.
Yeah.
So, oh
I'm
yeah,
glad you have a picture of me on your desktop. It really
yeah.
makes me feel good.
The king, the royal king. So, okay. So essentially what happens is if you do have multiple S88s, you just got to make sure that you select.
You're assigning the correct one.
Yeah, oh, by the way, yeah. So this does get a little confusing. This changes, this lower right one changes which one you're associating it to. And to view them, you wouldn't use this lower one. You'd actually go up to the top left here, and then you can select it. So they can actually sort of be controlled to different link S88s in theory. Anyways, we haven't tested it, so I couldn't tell you whether or not there's any kind of confusion, but let's kind of maybe hope that the masterminds over at Marklin kind of sorted that out and they do actually work.
Well, I mean, the logic doesn't really play out because if you need another S88, you just connect it to your link. So it really doesn't make sense to connect two link S88s because then you need another power supply also.
It could be affected by proximity. Like, where do you want the link S88, for instance?
Well,
It's just another way to skin a cat, I think. But
well, at
yeah,
that point, yeah. I mean, I guess technically, in a strange sort of way, yes. If
yeah.
you need it out by somewhere where the cable doesn't reach, but there are extension cables that I think will extend that. And
We'll just kind of remember part of the primary reason we like to use the S88s, if anything, is for that backward compatibility is to use with the old the old S88s, the 6088 and 60880 models.
Yeah.
So that just kind of alleviates that. Even though, like you and me, I converted that short, what was it, a meter long ribbon cable?
Yes.
To a Cat 5, so it would be longer.
You could do that.
Yeah, so.
Actually, had a phone call and some guy was asking about cables for that, and I said, yeah, we use Cat 5 and just take the plug off the ribbon cable and put it on the Cat 5 cable, and off you go.
Yeah. Just I would if you do that to yours, make sure you have one ribbon cable as a reference because it can kind of get confusing as to what you're doing with the wiring.
Take off both ends, and then
It's
yeah,
like, uh-oh.
figure it out. Something I would do.
Yeah, well, I've done
Oh,
it. Yeah.
so one thing I forgot to mention earlier. Look at that. Look at that. It's that time of year, people. I know everybody. I've gotten so many requests for the Christmas tree. I think we're up to 0. But yes, look, it's a Christmas tree, Curtis. Look how big it is. Look at that.
Well,
There you go.
well, look, it's a package of Christmas cookies.
Oh, well, did you get that on the plane on the way back from Milwaukee?
Just hide that labeling there, so no advertising.
Oh, the fun we have.
Oh boy, people are gonna really enjoy this webinar.
Yeah. A little too much Christmas eggnog.
Anyway, so yeah, that answers one of our questions. We just recently got that was for we don't have to ask. That's a transformer question. Did you see any interesting questions up to this point?
Not.
Yes. So why don't you field this as you answer? What is the difference between the turntable 74861 and 74862?
Yeah, I was going to answer that, and basically it's just the color. They just kind of redesigned the segments, so to say. I think the blank segments now have a wood ring around it, and it's a darker color. That's basically it. I did talk to a guy at the factory, and he told me all the little changes in it, but I can't remember one of them. I have no idea what the.
Oh, there. Didn't they do something with the sensor pegs?
No, I think they're the same. I
So,
think they're actually the same. We'll have to get one as a sample and check it out.
so here's a quick display of it. Let's share that one again. There's the website. There's a quick display. So they definitely did some color updating. I could probably pull up another page on it. It does kind of look nice.
Hit the magnifying glass icon there in the lower left. There you go.
Go full screen there.
Good.
So there were some internal changes on it or coding changes.
Not really. Like I said, I totally forgot everything he told me about it because we talked so long about so many things.
Are we under any kind of non-disclosures or anything like that on this thing?
No, I mean, there's nothing. He said basically it's the same. I remember him saying that, but
because I have the turntable.
yeah, you still need to order that servo, don't you?
So this is the dismantled C-track. And this is kind of I do like the design. I kind of like what they did with it. So underside you have your decoder, and you can see they actually use a 21 pin decoder here.
Yeah.
That focused well enough, which is pretty cool. So you can actually, like, if you dare to take yours apart, you can actually pull that off and then put it on the tester, I think, and test all your functions to make sure it's working right.
Yeah, you can put it on the tester.
Yeah. So what I like about that, and a lot of people they're talking about how it might be binding up. Now the way it works is this is the cab end. This is the sensor side that actually reads where it's indexed or located on the track. But the locking mechanism is actually on the opposite side, and they've put this little micro servo on there that just basically pushes this latch for in or out. And my theory is it's nothing to do with this that causes it to kind of stop on the bed, whether your bed's level or not. We won't get into that, but it's potentially whether or not the servo is retracting enough or the latch retracts enough where it's not hitting anything. It's hard to see this side. That's what the real issue of identifying if that's the issue, because you can't really see this in the track whether or not it's rubbing or not. But in a lot of cases when the turntable maybe hangs up, it was taking just a little bit of a nudge and then it would move forward. So this is such a small friction point. That's my guess. So There you go. C-track turntable in repair. So still. Okay, so we do have a comment again. Another comment. Thanks, Phil. Speaking of the S8, he can confirm L88s will connect OK to a first S88 module using a Cat6 cable, 50 feet long, and a second S88 daisy chain with a 30-foot Cat6 cable. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, Cat6 cables. My theory on whole Cat6 cables would they use that to wire up internets in commercial buildings. So why couldn't it be used to extend a channel on an L88 or an S88? So
yeah, we haven't heard of any maximum length that you have to adhere to with that. And so, yeah, as far as we know, it's as big as your layout. How's that?
yeah, I think the one thing that I would consider maybe a primary restriction here, so power cable's a little short, is that down here we have a voltage switch. And if you're using the ribbon cable side or traditional S88s, you do need to switch this to 5 volts. The Cat5 system or the new S88s operate on a 12 volt. So you might actually have more voltage. So if anything, I think you would just have more of a reliable signal that you can kind of depend on rather than just the old S88s. But, if you actually use Cat5, I've run at least 9-foot wire cables that have adapted these to Cat5. No problem. So yeah, take that as you wish. So
You try it and see if it works.
yeah. Okay.
Anyone else have any questions? Want to raise your hand? Speak to us? Anything? Nothing? Bueller?
Okay. Well, you feel like diving into your topic?
Yeah, it'll be short, but that's okay because it's really I had these visions of the article going, like really, long and boring, a lot like Curtis's. Not to put too fine a point on it, but it ended up.
Oh, that's fine.
He'll never know. It ended up being very short because most of the article was written on just how to program sounds in a Marklin digital decoder, just the stock sounds that you download from the website. So this one was just like a little, oh, by the way, this is how you do this, and it kind of really got really short on me. I'd use big pictures to take up a lot of space. Actually, that's not the reason, but I wanted people to be able to read it, so I kind of made the pictures a little big. So anyway, let me share my screen here.
Dive in.
Yeah. Here we go. So let's see, how do I start out here? Basically, there's not a whole lot that you need to know. It's a lot like I said, just programming a decoder from the stock sounds. All you have to do is enter your own sounds into the file on the programmer. So however you get those sounds, it kind of doesn't matter. They just need to be a WAV file or an MP3, I believe is what it is. Yeah, MP3 format. And like I said in the article, I just went and downloaded a bunch of sounds for free. I actually had to hand a couple of them off to Curtis to make them a little bit louder for my purpose. I was putting just sounds in the what is it, the My World Halloween locomotive. So I didn't want steam sounds. I didn't want a chuff. I didn't want brakes. I didn't want any of that. I just wanted creepy sounds. So it was really kind of kind of good because what you can do is you can download the standard sounds from the Marklin website and then add your own sounds into that file for that decoder. So you can put your own engineer sounds. You can put your own station announcements in there. And it's the exact same thing, except I did it from scratch, where I only used the sounds I downloaded. I didn't add to a sound file that was on the Marklin website, but it ends up being the same thing. So you do have only a certain amount of space memory on the decoder, 64 megabits, which is typically fine. I don't think I've ever used all of them. In fact, even in this locomotive, I think I only got 3/4 of the way up on the scale. If you've used the programmer, you know what scale I'm talking about. It tells you how full your decoder is with sounds. And still, I've never actually filled up a decoder. And even after Curtis did the modifications and made it louder for me, is where we found out that the file size got really big because it turned it into a stereo sound, where you don't need stereo when you're using a single speaker, a mono speaker. So that's always something to be wary of. Anyway, you can put the sound files that you make in their own categories that's already in the decoder tool. Let's see, did that expand it a little bit bigger, Curtis, so people can see it?
Yeah, it is
Okay.
full screen. I mean, I
Okay, good.
do want to make a comment about the sound file bit size was what you're referring to, where it actually becomes a huge file. One stereo will basically double it because you have a left and right channel. I think the guys who can at least figure out how to audio engineer this stuff would understand what I'm talking about. The other thing is sometimes the what we call bit depth or the quality of the sound can be too high. It's sort of the equivalent of having a 4K TV as opposed to a high definition, a non 4K TV. It exponentially more than doubles or quadruples the size of the file. So just be wary of when you go for high file sizes or high quality audio, it makes the file too big. So
Yeah.
yeah, so
So wherever you download them from, or however you get them. Um, so you basically open your the M decoder tool just like normal, and you can modify whatever you want first, which goes back to our original article about how to do this, and I'm not going to cover that. Because what I'm interested in is the sound selection, and the tab in the upper right of this window is the sound selection tab, which will open up all the sound files in your sound library, and or you can at least get to them. And what you will do is you will go to the I can't even hardly read it, especially without my glasses. The
Eigen
Ein
Bibliothek.
Bibliothek. Yeah, Ein Bibliothek, which is basically your own library. And you're creating your own library of sounds. Even though you already have them on your computer, you have them in a file, but you got to load them into the programmer to load them into the decoder. So each of these has in your own sounds is a category of railroad / locomotive sounds separated out in different sections. If you click on the Ein Bibliothek, it will open up this window, which will explain exactly what you want to do. I would have put this particular text in my article, but I couldn't copy and paste this. So I had a limited amount of time because I was leaving to go to a dealer event. So I kind of had to do the shortcut and just do a picture of this page.
You couldn't do a
But
screen grab or anything like that?
no, well, I mean, it would have been a JPEG anyway. So I couldn't copy and paste all this text. But this window will scroll down and it will give you definitions of basically what to do and what the categories are, and it does translate it from bremsen is brakes, fahren is driving, and you can see that down here. It will translate it to English, so you will understand what category to put sounds in. Okay, so to add a sound, what you're going to do is you're going to select the create your own sound in the lower left, and you click on that and it will open up basically the definitions of whatever category you choose, but you'll be able to add a sound file to that folder. Now, this is one thing that kind of threw me for a loop at first, was when you click on the folder that's already in there to add a sound file, you're naming your sound file, even though the program says new folder. You're not creating a new folder. You're only creating, you're loading that sound, and you have to give that sound a name so you know how to reference it when you load it into the decoder, if that makes any sense. The terminology, basically, what I'm getting at, the terminology that it says here, new folder, it actually should say new sound, or not even new sound. It should, you type in the name of the sound that you're entering, even though it says new folder. I thought it was creating a new folder and then I would put all those sounds in that folder. No, this is creating a sound slot that you're going to rename and then enter a sound into it, basically. So this new folder is going, and it probably doesn't make any sense until somebody tries to do it. You would name this, scream is what was one of mine, is a woman screaming in this file that I'm doing for this Halloween locomotive. And so I would rename where it says new folder to woman screaming, and then you click on the note with the plus sign in the other half of the screen, other quarter of the screen or whatever, or sorry, 3/4 of the screen. And there you would go and find the file on your computer, because it will open up another window where you can find the file on the computer and basically enter it into this folder. And that way it's in there with the right name and it's already in your programmer. Now, I know that doesn't make a lot of sense if people don't actually follow through and do this, but it's worth trying at least. Go ahead, read the article, follow it.
I just pasted a screenshot of those
Okay.
digital audio creation for you into the chat window. So if anybody wants to see that, those are the steps that are in there. So, but yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, it's weird that they called it a folder.
It's weird that they call it a folder. So you have to remember that a lot of sounds for locomotives, and I use a whistle as an example, is there's a start of the whistle where the pitch is low and it gets high very briefly, and then there's the loop where it's a continuous whistle and it will loop and loop and loop until you let go of the button, and then there's an end where the pitch goes from high to low, or if the engineer does some special toots at the end or whatever. That is one entire sound for our ears, but it's actually 3 or more sound files strung together. So I think most people will just use the entire sound file rather than breaking it up into sections and looping it and having a beginning and an end.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So these 5 or 6 files,
yeah,
those are defaults. Those just kind of automatically come up?
They automatically generate. You don't have to use them. You can put the entire sound file in the start wave at the top, and it will play that to the end and then just go silent.
Okay, so they're just breakups because...
Yes, because like a whistle, you have a long and short whistle as a function on a locomotive on your central station. So that's how they do a long and short whistle. The short whistle is the start and the end of the whistle,
Yeah.
but the long whistle has the loop in the middle.
And that's just an example because if you
Yes.
had some different kind of, like the chuffing sound might be different, or I'm actually thinking you could have two people in the loop having two different conversations and they would just talk over each other, right?
It would play one after the other.
It's sequential.
It's sequential, yeah.
Wait, the loops are sequential, or is it? I just figured they would overlap like a multi-channel, like a left and right speaker.
You know what? I haven't tested that. I don't have a definite answer for
Yeah,
that, but
because it's
my
hard.
assumption was it plays each of those files sequentially. So you can have a whistle that has a couple of toots in the middle and then play the end of it or loop it. You can loop, well, actually not loop. Let's see.
Well, the thing is, in my mind, a loop wouldn't end. It just cycles through. So that's why you would, if you had two
Yes,
loops, you
I,
would just overlap.
I agree, but in my mind, the loop would have to end to play the end wave.
Yeah, so there's got to be parameters. Like there's
So,
got to be. Well, no, 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 no. I stand corrected. It's possible because it depends on the switch that you're using for the sound function. Because remember how you have whistles that will not stop unless you disable the whistle.
well, that's a configuration of the button on your central
Yeah,
station.
right. So I think that's where the loop would play. Otherwise, it might just be, as you say, you can load it all into a start wave and it will end on its own. But if you had, uh, if this was a loop, for instance, so in the context of a never-ending whistle, that would only get to the end wave once you disabled the function. And, in the instance of maybe like a chuff, especially a locomotive, a steam chuff, you might have uh, different looping channels that I don't know if it would. Again, I just don't really know what the parameters, whether or not
You're
there's
right.
anything like
You could probably
microjogs.
get a if it plays them all the loops at once, you could get a two or three or four tone whistle going.
Yeah.
So yes, in that respect, yeah. I mean, that's something we can probably try in our free time. But one thing I want to mention is I'm not entirely sure how it would work for a steam chuff because a chuff is in itself a start, a short, middle, and an end. So for a steam chuff, you would have to really know how to edit that single chuff out of the sound file. Otherwise, you could be cutting off half your chuff if you don't know exactly what you're doing. Do you get what I'm saying, Curtis?
Yeah, yeah, I do. And I'm just kind of thinking there's some certain instances, especially like watching some musical editing videos, as I tend to do, that they actually build I don't know if depth or body is the correct terminology,
Yeah,
but when they have a single sound on a single source, like a single loop, like loop one,
yeah,
it sounds like it's not enough. It doesn't have any body to it. So what they would do is they would actually double up
yeah.
the audio with slight micro changes, and that would actually make it sound more robust. So maybe I wonder if that's
Well,
something to track.
no, that is that, and that's how they make the chuff sounds for locomotives. Because I mean, if you look at it, a lot of these locomotive sounds, without using just a standard locomotive sound, so they all sound the same. For different locomotives, that's exactly what they do because these locomotives don't actually exist in a running state. So they kind of have to do exactly what you're saying, mix different locomotives together to get a sound for a unique locomotive. Um, and you can see that I've seen that in decoders. When you get deep into the decoder, you can see that. So
Yeah,
uh,
to some degree, guys, it's worth sort of noting that you won't always get instruction from us, but you will get exploration and just ways that you can think through this stuff yourself.
yeah, and if nothing else, we will give you an answer we think. And we could be right, we could be wrong. But we at least give it a little thought.
We do the thinking for you, so you don't have to.
Okay, so yeah, right here I'm showing basically you hit this note with a plus on it, and that takes you to where you would like to add the file. I already have, like down here, I have the growl selected on the left side. Okay, and you'll notice on this, every sound here has a blue note next to it, but the growl only has a file. And that's because, like, it goes back to, like I said before, where it says new folder.
Mm-hmm.
This was, I did this on purpose. I was going to highlight it and kind of explain it, but I realized that would be a very long-winded explanation in text form. This is that goes back to that whole at the top where it says new folder.
Let me ask a quick question in case I missed it. So each of these files that have like boo, laugh, chase music,
Mhm.
are they under each of those new folder creations, or are all these included under that sort of new folder thing that you were looking at earlier?
I had to change the name new folder to each of these sounds.
Oh, okay, all right, thanks. Yeah.
Okay. And then once you exit out of that folder, like where it says growl, it has a folder. Once you exit out of that, it changes it to a note. So until it's kind of realizes it's a I don't know, it's a computer thing. It just wants to name it new folder. Once you give it a new name, I don't remember if it was once you add a sound to that, let's call it a folder, even though it's not, then it changes to a note. So even though you see the file here next to the growl, it will change to a note all by itself. Don't worry about that. And that was basically it. And Curtis didn't actually see the last sentence here on my article because we don't read each other's articles.
Habitually or not.
And,
Apparently they didn't catch it in the editing department either. Because
oh, I made sure it went through.
nicely done.
I was going to put a little smiley face emoji, but then I thought that would be a little too corny. So, I mean, I know I didn't really explain this whole article all that well, but I just wanted to basically highlight where it says new folder, you're actually naming the sound so you can reference it.
You are kind of diving into stuff that normal folks probably wouldn't address, which is audio editing in some cases too.
Yeah, and most of this article, you need to know how to program a decoder in the first place. So, yeah.
So we did have a question: is there a place where they can download free American engine sounds?
You'd probably have to just do a Google search on that because, like I said, I didn't do traditional sounds. I just Googled ghost sounds for this locomotive, which for some reason I didn't get it running here behind me today, but that's okay. We have the Christmas.
Well, I would think you might have the option of looking up, doing a search for locomotive audio, and as maybe fruitless or fruitful as that can be, you'll get a lot of pages. Another avenue that that I won't officially announce is that you can, like for instance, the Marklin has a library of sounds. Obviously, there maybe not have the American Indian sounds that you want, but there are other brands that do have audio libraries that maybe you can pilfer from that one. So
No, you can't download those sounds.
from the brand as yet to name be unnamed. So,
The as far as I know, they only work with their decoders.
but well, you the thing is, if you know how to get into it,
Yeah, if you
the
could
audio
break it
files.
apart, yeah, maybe.
Yeah. If you have the programmer for it, I believe you can actually access the actual sound files. You just got to know where to look.
I,
So I'm not going to get into that. So
I didn't travel that deep into it.
yeah.
So no.
Well, when you ask questions that drill down into a rabbit hole, that's where you end up. So
Yeah,
cool.
that's my.
Well, that was informative for me. I
It was kind of fun.
haven't dived into that at all. So
Yeah, I know, and we actually, which is kind of too bad. The guy that usually raises his hand here, Gary from Hawaii, he's the one that said, "Hey, have you guys tried this?" And I said, I talked to him. I said, "No, I haven't tried it." And he says, "It's pretty easy. You should try it." I said, "Okay, I will. Maybe I'll write an article about it." And I was going to give him props here because he's the one that started me thinking about it and doing it.
well, since he's not here, we'll give him crap. So why aren't you here on the day of broadcast?
I know, the one you missed, the one time you don't raise your hand, Gary. Give me a break.
How
So,
dare you?
Gary, we should call him.
Hey, why aren't you online?
Hey, Gary. So you already pretty much covered yours, right? No, you talked about.
Yeah, mine was down a real deep rabbit hole. Let's see if we can. Let's see how fast we can get through this. I want.
Yeah, grab your milk and blankets, people,
Yeah.
because how was Milwaukee Train Fest? We got a Dean. Train Fest was actually really busy, wasn't it? I mean, it was cold.
It was cold, and yeah, we kept active, so
It was nice and busy. I mean, obviously it slows down at the on the Sunday afternoon, but it was nice and busy.
okay. We have a gentleman. I have many decoders from old locomotives, MM or DCC, which is the way to find their address in the CS3.
Yeah, it's not as easy as the CS2. One thing is they're going to have to be on the programming track. Um, you will have to enter the locomotive as an MM decoder manually and save it. Once you have it saved in your central station, then you get back into edit mode. The box for the read, the address will be there. It's not there.
Let me just show that.
Yeah, it's not there when you enter the locomotive, but it's there as once the locomotive is saved.
Yeah. So let's say you're adding a locomotive. I don't really know how it works with the DCC, honestly. So
well, it's gonna look for both anyway. Okay, so
all right. So in order for you to actually search for the address, you need to first load up, like Rick said, a default locomotive. Obviously, you're not going to have the address, so you don't have to worry about that.
Right.
Just need to make sure you set the decoder type. It defaults to DCC. Make sure it's MM for Marklin, and then you click OK.
Correct.
And now it's saved. So now what you're going to do is you're going to go back into the edit locomotive mode. Sorry, edit locomotive. Boom. Okay, and you see we put it on the programming track. Don't worry about the icon. That's where you now select the read button, and it will look to scan for what the address is.
Now, I believe it only scans the traditional, so to say, 80 original addresses.
An FX locomotive. It won't scan. It won't scan for dip switched locomotive. It will scan for an old FX decoder.
It scans for addresses. It looks for a power draw.
Does it look for any address then?
Yeah, from 1 to 80. You know what? I think because the FX decoders were addressable to 255, I think it scans up to 255.
Yeah. And I've had to take a couple passes sometimes because you never know if there was something wrong with the locomotive.
Right, and you know what? Sometimes it doesn't work. And if it's not a Marklin decoder, I've had very little success with that working. And there's basically nothing you can do at that point besides open it up and see what it is. And even if it is a Motorola decoder, a Marklin Motorola decoder, it will sometimes come up as a DCC decoder if it's multi-protocol, if it's already in your central station, it will come up as DCC.
I think, yeah. The
If
other
it's,
thing too is that, if you really can't have it reading, then you have the option of using the factory reset.
that's in the setup page.
Yeah, but so let's see.
Nope, you were in it. You had it. Set up in the
So
center.
you
There you go.
setup.
Uh,
Local reset.
local reset.
But is that standard for like non-Marklin decoders? Right. So if that's not the case, then won't you have to actually maybe go into the CV values and use the reset value here?
You have to, yeah, you have to go to the hamburger there, as they call it in Germany, up there in the upper right there, down, nope, down,
Hamburger.
there.
Oh, this one? Oh, is that what they call it, the
Call it
hamburger?
the hamburger. And then you add a CV, insert CV.
Okay.
Well, actually, you don't even have to do that.
Usually, I think you could have just
Go to
clicked
any
this and
CV,
adjusted the CV.
change that to 8, and then a value of 8, and let it read it or write it.
So his additional question is, can he also change the address? If you don't have the address initially, you can't make any changes because it's not going to know what to address to, as far as I'm aware of. In that case, you do have to reset the decoder, and then you can change the address at that point, because a reset will always have a default address to begin with, and you might need to know what that is. So I think that's all correct, isn't it, Rick?
That decoder reset in the setup tab, I'm not sure exactly how well that works, so to say, because I think it comes down to where the configuration of the decoder is stored, whether it's in the central station or whether it's in the decoder itself, because I have done that local reset, and what it does is it deletes it from your inventory on your central station, and then it will, if it's MFX, it will reload it again. But if you have the light function on, it will reload it, and the light function will be on again. So it's weird.
So our definition of what this local reset may not be 100%. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, and it's not like I've really had time to do a lab experiment and experiment with that particular local reset button, because anytime I've used it, it's always been in some desperation where I need to do something to a locomotive, and I don't have time to research that.
So I guess essentially the question is, this local reset, does it refer to just resetting the variables in the CS3 as opposed to resetting the actual decoder, which is more foolproof, I think, in the CV reset?
Correct.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was.
It's almost like you can restart the apps in the central station, or you can restart the whole central station.
Yeah, that's always been a little bit of a. It's like, what's it doing? It doesn't do the same thing.
Exactly. So there's your explanation, clear as mud.
It's the best we got.
You might have to send us an email or call us. We can at least try stuff over the phone, see what happens. But yeah.
All right, so well, let's kind of kick it into my side of the article, much as I'm trying to avoid it. All right.
Time for milk and blankets.
Yeah. So basically, the part of the main point that adds to these variables is you have to understand sort of the type of contact or sensor you're using. And this is the quickest way that I can actually make this demonstration is by opening up a graphic that I had to basically build up, and it's kind of hash work together. So I don't know how smoothly it's going to go. So essentially we have, let's see if I actually have a diagram of that here. So essentially, let me get these locomotives out of the way. We generally have 3 types of contacts that we can use that are actually sort of like parts that you can get through Marklin. One is a magnetic trigger, which is what we call momentary, and it's the same way as the circuit trigger. Those are also momentary. So if you don't know, the circuit trick is that little flipper switch that gets contacted when your slider under the locomotive or even the tail end of a rail car hits that center flipper and activates this trigger. Magnets are the same thing. They're only momentary. They go on and almost go off immediately afterwards because there's no length to it. The third type of trigger is what we call an occupation track or a contact trigger. It basically uses contact tracks. Now there are parts that make up a contact track, but you can also sort of modify your tracks themselves with insulators to build your own. The advantage of building your own is that you can then add contact tracks under curves, which you really can't do. Now, the thing to be aware of is that you, in no way can you ever have a contact track on a turnout. It's just the way it's built, it just kind of makes it nearly impossible. I don't recall or know enough about like the M track or the K track to know if it's doable, but it's not really advisable. You don't really know whether or not.
It is I have done it. It is very difficult, and it's not a very good contact source. But it was the only track I could do it on. It's on the show layout that I built.
Yeah.
Not the one we take to shows now. My one that folds in half.
Yeah. Okay, so the functionality difference wise is that, okay, so let's actually go back to this one here. So under a circuit track condition, and oops, this is the one I want. Let's see, I don't think I have the correct graphic here. So under a circuit track condition, again, whoops, don't really move that. Let's move the locomotive here. If you have a locomotive here, and you're going to have to forgive the color, I don't really have this graphic properly set up, but again, when you make contact here, it's only going to be on when the slider's over this. So the moment it travels off, it's going to be off. And then by the time you get to this, let's say there was another light slider, it will click it on and go off. So the reason why this is important is because if you have an instance where you want to measure an entry point here, this is fine. It would work fine here. But let's say you're trying to reroute something out where it turns this turnout. This contact won't work because, it might just switch this turnout halfway through. So you have to make sure that when you have trains and you want it fully inside within that turnout, then your contact might need to be out here somewhere. Okay. So there's sort of restriction. Pardon?
Yeah, that limits your length of train also.
Yeah. So let's see. I think I have this. This is sort of like movable. So forgive the graphic around it. It's just a rough graphic. So yeah, when you have you like if this is your trigger point, you see it's still straddling that turnout, right? And it's like you just might need to move it forward. So this applies a lot with block situations when you're trying to make sure the train clears a signal or something like that. So those are circuit tracks sort of in action. Contact tracks are a little bit more beneficial in my mind because, whoops, we moved that back here. So when we have contact tracks, let's see if it's lined up correctly. Yeah, actually lined that up right. As long as once the train hits that contact track, this is a nerd in work, it will it's triggered by the wheels and it will stay on throughout the length of the train until the train actually leaves it, and then it will actually shut that off. So that's the functionality of a contact track versus a circuit track. And there's different ways that you can apply that, which sort of made this article sort of challenging and difficult to write because there's just all these different ways that you can apply these. So in the sense of how I might want to do this entry point. So the way I wrote the article was like, in one instance, what would you do when you have like a depot station like this, where you have a train actually waiting here, for instance, and it's not going anywhere? So one example that I had here is that once the train makes contact here, then it activates this trigger, and I use this event to actually set this light to green, which will then allow this train to just what do you say, depart from the depot station. So then we have this rotating thing going around, and you can do the same thing with this circuit track example, right? And this is just for entry points. So this makes it a little easier that way. But in the instance of like if I had some rerouting going on that I wanted to have happen, like this, and this isn't the ideal situation for it, but I have used it. It doesn't happen at a depot station, but it might happen in a branch line, for instance, or something that loops on a different side. So the example that I've done here is like once the train clears this, then I can actually use what we call an exit trigger, where when that shuts off, it triggers an event. And I would use it to maybe switch tracks so that as long as this is here, I don't want the next train to roll into it. I don't want it to do this. So once it clears this, I would actually rewrite this turnout so that it starts traveling up this way. So that's one effect. So the other effect that we used here, or variable that we use for contact tracks as opposed to circuit tracks, is let's see, what do I do here? Track occupation. If I really used this setup with the circuit tracks, right? This is only momentary. Remember, it only reads off the slider. So if in order to show whether or not this track is occupied, for instance, this slider would have to stop right on top of that contact track all the time. And that's not really possible. It doesn't really work. Trains slow down at different speeds, and it might stop here, it might stop here. So you don't really know where it's going to stop. So we can't really use circuit tracks for occupation. However, we can do something a little bit crazy, which is let me hide this. This is what we call a control contact here on the bottom, and a control contact doesn't actually have a physical attachment to the layout. It really is sort of a construct in the CS3 that I can switch on or off. And let me pull up my CS3 screen so I can kind of show that to you. Let's see, where's my CS3 screen here? Says right, yeah. So let's hide that. And let's see if I can actually show the articles. Show the articles this way. The screen real estate gets so compact sometimes. So let's change this so it's not off. So essentially what happens is we have what we call actual physical triggers. And you can really see that when we added it. So a physical trigger is something that is actually wired to the track. It's contact, read, or switch, and then you generally assign this to a module or a contact number using one of the S88s, right? The other side, a controlling contact, doesn't actually need to, even though it has modular contact, it's not connected to actually anything. And the benefit of this is that, so let me name this so you know what it is. Control contact. All right, and I know I had this other ones for the articles, but sometimes when you're writing these things, you just reuse stuff. So the in an event structure, let me create an event. Add an event. Okay. If I literally had, let's close this. If I use something that was connected to track, it actually creates a trigger. In other words, it's triggered by where the train is. If it makes contact with the track, or in this sort of instance, let's see, I think that changes it. It departs that track, sort of like when it turns on or off. Okay, so that's the sense of an actual physical connection. Now, if I were to load a physical connection into the system here, okay, this basically evaluates is the track occupied or unoccupied, depending what position I set it for. Okay. So this can also be done, and I know it's going to get a little confusing because now I'm approaching it from a different angle. So this is basically what we call a condition. It's evaluating what state this triggers at. Okay, now remember, this contact is driven by the train. It actually gets switched according to if the train makes contact with it. Now, the thing you can do about these is you can actually switch it from a condition to an action. Okay, and this is where it's going to get a little weird. I don't know if I'd say dicey or not. It just needs explanation. So the thing is, I can actually now control which way this gets switched. In other words, I can have it turned off this way, right? So I can actually switch it off or on. But the problem here is if I, in software, switch it so it goes off, right? The moment the train hits it, it's going to turn it back on. And we don't always want that to occur. We don't want the train to modify the way that this is set. So that's why we use control contacts. And a control contact is, now let's go back into edit mode so I can change the system. Now we're actually going to go back to that contact trigger that I wrote here. And this also has an evaluation state, so we can look at what it's set for. You know, is it showing as it's on or off? But if I switch it to an action, right, this way, then there's nothing on the track that's going to change it out. In other words, it'll never change to this color because the track won't trigger it. This won't have any effect. Well, no, that's not correct. I shouldn't say it that way. If a train rolls onto us, there's nothing to roll onto. You know, this can be on the layout. Like, let me edit the trackboard page and I can put it on the layout. Oops, sorry. I'm dealing with the wrong window here. I can put it here. Now, this isn't actually affected by anything on the track. So I can switch it on or off and it won't be interrupted. So it's a control that we can control in software. It's not controlled by whether or not a train makes contact with it. So hopefully you get that. It's sort of a long-winded approach, and I'm sure you're about to run out of your milk. So so what we do with these control contacts is this is sort of a two-stage approach. So going back into my edit mode. Nope. Oh, wrong edit mode. I want to edit my events. There we go. Edit events. These, one thing you can look at, so these contacts are driven by track, right? And you can see it's just all automatic. It's whatever the track or trains do to it. A control contact has a different context. So when I load that in, it is now a manual mode function. Okay, I can either click on this and activate the event manually, or I can use the control contact to control it manually. See how it switches on or off? So this is now sort of, it's a half manual function. I can automate it by using a recording trigger like this one, for instance. So I switch it where in manual mode, and now I have two ways of controlling it. I can either control it by whatever train rolls onto it, or I can control it manually. So we're going to have all these variables involved, which makes, you know, it's kind of made the article difficult to write. Now, in this sense, sort of going off on a tangent here, I can load a control contact and I can change the value on it. Sort of like I can now trigger it using this to activate it, or I can still use that in action. So there's these four states that kind of hard to explain without specific examples, but the control contacts really kind of make it easy to do certain things without having to worry about whether or not the train itself is going to confuse or conflict with whatever events you've got going on. So I think I feel like it's just muddied enough where you guys might be confused. So might have to hold it off there. Kind of check out the articles. But the way the control Part of the reason why I wrote this control contacts is now if all I had access to on the layout, and let me kind of change screens on here. If all I had access was these momentary switches, what I could do is now when the train actually hits this, I can turn this contact track on and now use that as my occupational reading. As long as that stays on, then it's good. And then I can use this trigger over here to turn the contact track off. So that's how we can simulate track occupation. So again, the main variables is whether or not you can do something with a contact track, which is the same thing, or you can now have this 3-stage approach where you got to use the circuit track to create a contact track. So that's one of the primary uses for control contacts and why we have all these different ways to approach one solution. So anyways, kind of long-winded there, obviously, but hopefully you guys kind of catch that.
Yeah, that was no. I get. I haven't applied it, but I get it. That gets deep in the routing of the central station.
Yeah, I mean, the control contacts is really what I used when I did the, I think it was 2 webinars ago where I showed the tracking thing. And this might very well be part of that previous email that we got, whether or not we can duplicate events.
That was the that was the webinar where everyone left, right?
So somebody put on a bird chirping soundtrack, and then he raised his hand so we would hear him.
So, we got a question here. There we go. When programming a decoder, what's the difference between the physical and logical functions? Physical function is like a light on and off. That's a physical function. A logical function is, so to say, a sound.
Yeah, it's a software thing. If it's only occurs within the software, then it's basically a logic function.
Yeah. Logical function is like the firebox flicker of the light. Actually that's a physical function, but it's got a logical.
I was going to catch you on that one. Yeah,
it's got a logical. I guess that's not really a logical.
The good way to look at it, at least I look at it, a physical function actually needs some wires connected to it.
Yeah.
A logical function.
The servo for like the pantographs. Yeah. It would be a light function. There's a light going on and off. Logical function. Oh, the brake squeal is a perfect logical function.
Yeah.
Okay, your brake squeal on and off. That's a logical function. So that's basically it. Okay, so now we get to the fun part of the show. Did you get anything in the mail this week, Curtis, from me?
Yes, I did. Should I open that?
Yes.
I'm actually getting my delivery got shifted from yesterday to today, of all things. But the scheduled delivery is at 9 o'clock tonight.
I didn't want to ask you, but it's like, oh yeah, I gotta.
I was gonna mention that to you, and then I forgot. Hang on, so let me grab.
All right, I sent Curtis something that I was at the factory in October, and I saw something there that I thought would be a very thoughtful gift for him, and we are good friends, so I figured he was not really worth the money, but I'd do it anyway.
Nonetheless, I'm afraid to ask.
Yeah.
So,
ooh, I can't wait. This is just
I gotta break the seal on this thing.
Yeah, you're gonna have to cut it open. Don't cut too deep, because
well, they do perforate these boxes, but they're kind of
those are tough little boxes. Oh, and there's a story.
Finger cut. No.
Okay, before you open that, not the box, but the Show that paper.
All right.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. You got to read the note too.
What is there something else or anything? Before I read it, why don't I just have you guys read it first?
It's too hard to read.
Is it backwards?
No, but I do call you moron.
Give you guys a chance to read that.
No, you probably, yeah.
All right, here we go. Hey, moron, here's a Christmas gift from me to you. It's a token of my appreciation of our friendship. This is for you to open during our webinar on Wednesday. No Peking duck. Haha, crack me up. It's nothing bad, just something I saw at the factory and thought of you. All right. I should actually show you that other thing that I got from the factory. So
wait a second. The wrapping paper. Show that wrapping paper. That's actually very special wrapping paper. You're
so
not.
are you saying I can't? Are you saying I can't rip it up?
No, you can. I have an entire roll of that. I'm gonna wrap every gift for the rest of my life with that. That came from my dad's shop.
It's like medieval wrapping paper.
That wrapping paper's from the '60s.
Oh.
It's gold and black.
I almost hate to tear this thing up.
No, go ahead. I got 1,000 feet of it.
Ouch. Use the pointy end against my hand with the tweezers. There you go. There's one up.
I can tell everybody's just waiting for this.
All right, here we go. The big reveal. Let's see. I don't know which way is up. This is up.
Ooh, look at that.
Factory.
Yeah. Now open it.
No. There's that side. Oh man. Oh god.
Yes.
That's terrible.
Yes.
I'm gonna put this between the Sinclair gas cars.
I just want you to know there are only 2 of those in the world.
And
there you go. Picture of me. Now, for those of you who don't know, you can have your face, you can have yourself printed on a boxcar if you visit the factory. And I saw that and said, oh, I know what I'm going to do with this. And yeah.
So I put it back in the box.
You put it the correct way out too.
Oh man, thank you. That's funny.
Yeah, I need to get a kick out of it.
I'm gonna feel bad that I don't have a picture.
and look, now this is part of the show where we say, look what I got. And I get to show you. I picked up that, which is a couple years old. It's the Photo Gray Class 24.
Isn't that the one I saw at the factory that I told her?
Well, you can't get these.
I mean, at the warehouse?
You can't get them in the U.S.
Oh.
Okay. And no, that was a Class 64 we had at the warehouse. But it's the same series. This is from 3 years ago. And I missed this one.
Oh, so you didn't get one.
I didn't get one, yeah. So now,
sweet.
I came across it and said I have to have that. And
I think, did I order that one?
No, we can't. You can't get it here in the U.S.
There had to be ways around it for us.
Well, they usually, you don't usually see them on the secondary market because people just snag these things and just keep them.
Well, I like how they have all these contests, and then you don't find out until they're in the magazine and the contest is already over.
It's too late. So, yeah, there we go.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, my room color is a little different, but yeah, a little Class 24 Prairie Pony. It's the same locomotive that comes in a starter set, but the starter set, it's all black and red, standard colors. And these little things have sound and smoke, and that's great. I love these Photo Gray locomotives. I think I have all of them. I'm not entirely sure, but this was one I was missing, and yeah, I got it.
Nice. Yeah, I still got some Christmas cards that I gotta get from that one. And then Rick got me one of these from the factory, and I actually vacuum packed it until I can actually clear coat it. But
Oh, yeah. That's the RC6 casting.
yeah,
Um,
it's a little die cast casting there that I got from me. So yeah, it's all wrapped up in my food saver wrapping.
That's actually a good idea because that'll keep it from tarnishing. It was kind of shiny
Yeah, it's getting a little tarnished anyways, so a little oxygen there.
until you do clear coat it.
Anyways,
that's the show and tell portion of the show. Look what I got. So yeah.
look what I got. Something you should just put something. Hope you're thinking of me.
Oh, you know what? Next time I'm up there, I can autograph it for you.
Yeah. No, I'll put on the mustache ahead of time.
Here you go, and the glasses, and yeah, it'll make it even more worthless.
Yeah. So.
Oh yeah.
No, thanks. Appreciate that. So.
Yeah. So yeah. I plan on taking this to shows, running it around the test layout.
Yeah, I'll bring mine and we can run them both, and then they can pretend. I'll just say, well, that was supposed to be me.
Well, we could draw you in a little stick figure.
Yeah. I'll just take a paper cutout from a printout and just kind of tack it on the outside.
Yeah. Something we would do.
Hey, you know what? I don't know if you can display the Halloween locomotive. That would have been great if you could have displayed.
Well, if you want to take the helm here, I can go dig it out of a box. But it just looks like a Christmas. I mean, it looks like the Halloween locomotive.
Yeah, but if you could show the sounds, maybe what we ought to do is we should get a video and post it. So they
yeah, because you really can't hear the sounds. I'd have to run it over here, and you wouldn't be able to hear the sounds anyway. And that's why I didn't even put a picture of it in the article. Because, like I said in the article, the sound decoders are bigger, so they take up more space. That locomotive is not made for that. I also put some UV lights in the cab, so it lights up that dark blue, purplish. It looks really good, especially in a dark setting.
Well, it's like I think the only thing that has less space internally for like adding LED lights is that Alpha locomotive.
That's true. That's true. Those things have no room in there.
Yeah. Anyways, do you guys have anything you'd like to comment on? No.
Yeah. Any questions? Anybody want an autograph picture?
Just raise your hand
on a boxcar.
Just raise your hand if you'd like to comment on anything, or if you have any questions. So,
if you, yeah, something to say to the knuckleheads. Nothing. No one. Bueller.
In the meantime, I got the sun coming and it's starting to shine in here.
It's
wish you guys happy holidays wherever you celebrate.
Yes.
And
hope you have a good New Year. Happy New Year.
Yep. Hope you don't get any kind of crazy weather. So, but
alrighty.
Well, it looks like we're at the end of our conversation. I do appreciate you folks joining us. I know it's a busy time for everybody, and it's just fun to have you. You guys have any questions, feel free to send them to our email for tech support, digital@marklin.com.
Or you can call us if you have something pressing, preferably not on weekends.
Yeah, or preferably not at 6 a.m. We are in California.
Our 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
Even though we probably will answer.
Okay. Well, thanks again, folks. We shall see you in a couple of weeks. I guess February. Oh, be on the lookout. We will. I think in the next couple months, definitely for the next issue, we will have the new updated index of all the articles. If you're hunting for certain information, we'll get that updated for you, because it's
maybe we should add maybe it's about time to add a page of all of the newsletter articles. instead of just last year's?
Well, just trying to add that we do now have a file that's just all the articles. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I
we're
know.
not going to do just the near end. So we're just going to add it as it's basically a different attachment now. So we will have
Oh, okay. Okay, so okay, I get
yeah,
it.
it just got to be sort of like people wanted to see the rest of the articles anyway, so it was just more efficient to give everybody a full listing. We do have a question. Oh, comment.
Comment from Phil.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. Happy holidays to you as well. So,
Yeah.
okay, with that being said, I think we are done. And again, happy holidays.